Welcome back. This is the second part of the same lesson. Due to some technical glitch, my recording was stopped. So let's resume. So we were talking about the offensive scenes, and the most problematic aspect of the film for the BBFC, however, was not the violence, but a scene involving Vincent taking drugs, heroin, and enjoying the experience. BBFC examiners note that the close attention to the paraphernalia of hard drug usage and a close up of a needle piercing skin with blood filling the barrel of the syringe. This was a problematic thing. The sequence is accompanied by 60-second surfer music and ends with Vincent driving while high and seemingly very satisfied with the effects of the drugs. The examiner reports claims this scene was problematic for the French classification board and certainly made the drug use appear attractive. Despite this, the drug use is key to and balanced out by a subsequent scene involving the gangster Marcellus' wife Mia. Mia makes heroin for cocaine, snores it, and overdoses, frothing at the mouth, causing Vincent to dramatically stab her in the heart with a syringe of adrenaline. This scene counterbalances the attractiveness of taking heroin, and the examiner report describes it as clearly displaying the consequences of drug taking. The film was classified 18 without cuts. So, although filmmakers uh, provided the counterbalance against the effects of taking a drugs. In one scene, in first scene, they showed the pleasure and very miniature details, which was a little offensive for audience and the BBFC. On the other hand, they also the filmmakers showed the negative reaction and outcomes of that drug, but still it was not considered suitable for less than 18 years of age people and minors and who those who are teens, not adults. Well, the video of Pulp Fiction arrived for classification in April 1995. The scene involving the injection of the heroin by Vincent was more of a concern on video where it could be replayed repeatedly and out of context. You know, flashbacks and back and forth, it kept on playing again and again. Same goes to, although we have 13 Reasons Why, which is quite recent season as compared to this 1994 film. The only problem with 13 Reasons Why was Hannah Baker, the main girl who committed suicide, and the scene where she openly, cut her wrist through a razor blade, and it was shown in a very detailed way that raised the red flag in the eyes of audience and some authorities and classification bodies. So we will talk about it in the bottom in the same handout about we have 30 reason why as another case study. We're going there as well. So BBFC requested the scene by be reframed to ensure sight of the needle entering the vein was off screen. They suggested filmmakers to cut out that scene and just show or carry on the story indirectly instead of being so direct. The BBFC requested the scene be reframed. Like we told, at this time, the BBFC was not yet working to published guidelines of or using large-scale public consultation exercises to inform its decision, but BBFC's director James Furman, who had himself worked in the field of drugs education prior to joining the BBFC, was concerned that this kind of detailed and ritualistic portrayal of mechanics of drug use had the potential to glamorize such behavior for those predisposed towards addictive behavior. So for him, it was a matter of concern. Well, the reframing cut was waived from the Blu-ray release of Pulp Fiction in 2011, and the film was classified 18 uncut for its 20th century cinema re-release in 2014 with BBFC Inside, drug use, sexual violence. If we talk about even Netflix, there is clear ratings in the left top bottom is displayed where it says they don't say drug use, they use substance use, maybe violence, bloodshed stuff like that. So it's openly written there. As the BBFC observer remarks in 1994, the language is pretty ripe too, but at 18, who gives a damn? So for the era of 1994, this film was too much, not that absorbable for the general audience. However, it won many, festivals and many awards because it was made by Torrentino, and it was a good one in terms of psychology and the script of the film, except the drag taking scenes. Moving on to another example for our media regulation, that is Exorcist, 1974 film. Uh, well, William Friedkin latest film Killer Joe is released this week, and I mean that week, so it seems like a good time to open the BBFC file for another Friedkin film, and it is one of the would prove one that would prove to be particularly notable for BBFC, The Exorcist. Submitted to BBFC in January 1974, this tale of demonic demonic possession was one of the number of controversial films to be seen by Stephen Murphy, BBFC secretary, 1971 to 75. The BBFC passed the Exorcist Acts without cuts, and in the letter published here, Murphy explains to a concerned local council the reasons why BBFC did this. Stress that the film is much less a problem of censorship than a social phenomenon. I mean, let me explain this, that film didn't have bloody scenes or offensive scenes, but the feel, the phenomena, the psychology which they try to portray was horrible. I mean, I remember, I read some articles. Obviously, I'm not that older, but while doing research about media regulations, I read an article where people who shared their own testimonials that after watching that film for the first time, they could not sleep well. They had in their mind the demons things going on because they portrayed the concept in a very horrible way. So, although there was no issue of classification there, Warner Home Video released The Exorcist on video in 1981 using X certificate from 1974, but the introduction of the Video Recording Act 1984 meant that BBFC had to determine whether the film was suitable for video classification, bearing in mind the risk of children being able to access the film at home. It was this concern about the risk of underage viewing in the home which led to the decision not to issue a video certificate, and therefore the film was withdrawn from sale. This has actually happened in that era. It was a videotape era. DVD and CDs were not there, were not invented till then. So uh, they were taken off from the rental market so that only it could be watchable in the cinema, and obviously they had strict rules of selling tickets to unsuitable aged audience. So due to that factor, risk factor, they stopped its lease, its rental services, and its selling services, in the local markets because of the certificate issue. So, James Furman, BBFC director, reiterates this argument in his response to a member of the public in 1993. Member of the public means uh, if you have seen 13 Reasons Why, uh, there are cases of criminal nature and there are cases of social nature. Social cases are not uh, conventionally handled by judges in the court. Rather, they have panel or jury of people, common people belonging to different professions, psychologists, engineers, parents, teachers, daycare owners, doctors, therapists. Different people sit in the court to help judge make judgment about that certain offense that may not be a criminal offense, but offense, for example, if you believe somebody and that somebody can attempt suicide or kill him or herself because of the bullying thing by you, So you did not physically touch that individual, but your bullying was too much, or maybe that person became so sensitive. So such cases are handled by the jury and people in addition to the judge. So that is why they are saying the public in 1993 also published here the he states that since we recognize the quality of the film, we have concluded that for the time being, its place is in the cinema only rather than at home. It would not be until 1999 that an 18 certificate was granted for video DVD release. So this is a story regarding the Exorcist, and in media regulation, you can talk about it. Obviously, you can change it in your own words. You have to, but it's good enough. Moving down, Terminator. I think you can read it by yourself. I want to jump on to 13 Reasons Why. This is the last example or case study for today's lesson. So, uh, what is the series about and where it is shown? First of all, and why it is a case of regulation. 30 Reason Why is a Netflix original series. It is an adaptation of best-selling young adult fiction title by Jay Asher, made in US. 30 Reason Why debuted in the UK on Netflix in March 2017. So if we talk about UK, then comes the role of BBFC. The work tracks a school and its local community in the wake of the death of two pupils and students, one of whom took her own life. It focuses particularly on the friend and in some cases enemies of one student, Hannah or Hannah Baker, the real name, the filmy name, who before taking her own life recorded a series of cassette tapes designed to highlight people whose actions she felt contributed to her unhappiness and death. So what are the class? This was actually the story, right? Not a non-fiction. It's a fictional story. So what are the classification issues in the series? Let me tell you initially that all episodes of any season cannot be treated equally as per the guidelines. There can be certain episodes which have some offensive scenes and they can be classified as 18, and there can be other episodes which may be good enough for 15. So it depends. The whole season is not treated equally. So as the story develops, it covers several strong themes and issues. There's an emphasis on suicide, but also discussion and sight of self-harm, explorations of depression and other mental health issues, drug misuse, strong sense of sexual assault, plot lines around the sexualization of teenagers, especially girls, by other teenagers, bullying and underage drinking. So that was the whole, crux of the plot. The portrayal of suicide, including the focus on the character's motivation and the aftermath of her death, includes strong bloody detail and strong injury detail. Well, is the BBFC particularly concerned about such themes, sexual violence and dangerous imitable behavior, including portrayal of suicide and self-harm, are flagged or concerned in BBFC's classification guidelines? The guidelines aim to reflect public opinion via our popular or regular public consultations research in UK law. So I just got an idea that you should also be searching BBFC's classification guidelines, which would be good enough to impress your, examiner. Or I will also try to, give you another handout written in simple way to make it easy, understandable, and comprehensible for you to write an exam as well. So we operate a strict policy when it comes to discipline of these issues. We consider, yeah, this is what it said actually in the guideline, that any novel information or techniques, the appeal of the work, the presentation, intensity, and treatment of the issues, and any potential legal issues such as risk of harm to young or vulnerable viewers. There is more information about the public consultations here. So actually, you can find a link. You can research it, including information about the research. So how did BBFC classify the episodes? Why are some 18 and why are some 15, which I already talked about? The series was emitted under the BBFC's watch and rate service for online only content. Since there were too many opinions, opposite opinions about, some people were in favor of the film, some said no, it's ridiculous, it is giving ideas of self-harm and drugs and even suicide to young and vulnerable audience. So to fix that thing, BBFC started a watch and read service for online only content for like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon Prime. for such kind of subscription-based services. BBFC compliance staff viewed each episode, considering the content in line with the BBFC classification guidelines. The BBFC has a statutory, which means optional or self-regulatory duty to classify video release on physical media such as DVD and Blu-ray in the UK. Though video on demand platforms like Netflix do not need to submit their content for BBFC classification by law, but many, including Netflix, do. But they do, to be on the safe side. They voluntarily submit their work to BBFC for classification. BBFC uses the same classification guidelines and age ratings like underage, U, PG means parental guidance, 12, 15, and 18, they are age groups for video on demand content as it does for physical media. The BBFC classified most of the scenes as 15. Like I told you, most of the scenes, most of the uh, episodes of that season were totally okay to be watched by 15 years old, kids. Which means we do not consider these episodes suitable for viewers under the age of 15. Means 15 or plus can easily watch it. 4 episodes, however, received an 18 age rating. So, what exactly happened? Why were not the scenes cut where they considered potentially harmful? As is often the case with films or series with unusual or borderline issues, the senior tier of classification staff, the BBFC's Board of Classification, comprising of the BBFC CEO, president, and two vice presidents, considered the key suicide scene. Actually, that was the main thing. They considered previous examples where the BBFC required cuts for an 18 age rating, including those who romanticize suicide or suggested techniques are easy, pain-free, and particularly effective. The Board of Classification passed the episodes containing the long suicide scenes 18, signaling the content is only suitable for adult viewing. So this is what actually they concluded, since it was a video on demand service and it is not covered by law, since it's subscription based, it's not aired or broadcasted on national television. That is why BBFC could not take strong stance. However, they suggested or rated it to be 18 or above. Let me clear, although I hope you know that 15 means 15 or above. 18 means 18 or above. 15 doesn't mean that 0 to 15 can watch it. So this is how. And 13 means 13 or above. And less than 13, usually I haven't seen any classification, which has some violence, a little bit of violence. And PG means parental control or parental guidance, where you can watch sitting with parents. So in that case, in West, they strictly follow these guidelines. And if a parent thinks he cannot accompany a child, so they do not get that film. This is simple. In a statement to the media, and BBFC clarified the seriousness with which they considered potentially harmful or disturbing issues like suicide in film and series, highlighting their work with charities and experts in relevant fields. Like I told you, this is what they remarked about. So, where were there warnings for viewers about the scenes? BBFC Insight provides concise explanation for why each episode and the series as a whole received particular BBFC age rating. Several episodes, including warning text on screen, nothing not noting that sexual assault, suicide, and violence in these episodes. Before episode 1, for example, a warning told anyone affected by content they were encouraged to get in touch with the charity Samaritans. Samaritans are actually like good citizens or people of good group of good citizens, like scouts, boy scouts or girl scouts, or maybe some NGO. They're called Samaritans. That you need to consult somebody sensible, which actually they suggested. Well, I'm actually jumping, but I would suggest you to read this document thoroughly. I would share with you this document as well in your Google Classroom or through WhatsApp group. They also provided some guidelines to call for Samaritan helpline, Samaritans.org, and something like that. So let me just conclude this lesson that we explored two case studies, two examples where those films raised concerns in the public, and after being submitted to BBFC, either they were totally stopped from sale, like Perfection, or they are suggested to add some cuts, or they would get harsh age rating. 18 and plus is actually a harsh age ratings, which harshly affects the revenue of filmmakers, because in the West, there are good number of people and audience between the age of 15 and 18 who regularly watch movies in cinemas. Like you told, you after 18 you become self-independent, self-sufficient, independent. You have to do job and studies simultaneously, and many students quit education after their high school or A level in abroad, and they just do their job and McDonald's or some pizza places and just earn enough money to spend decently in that week. So going to cinema sometimes becomes harder for them. That is why 13, 15, or 18 age rating, they are quite suitable for filmmakers, but they have to pay price for to cut some scenes or have some indirect shots in rather than going direct. So this brings ends to the second part of today's lesson. However, I'm going to share the handout with you so that you would watch it and read it thoroughly. After that, there's the Die Hard 1998 film, which again raised concerns. These days also there are films which raise concerns, but sometimes acceptability has grown to a new level, and all kind of films are sometimes accepted by audience in general. But still, there is a place for BBFC and other regulators which have been doing their job well in giving guidelines and certifications to those films. So this brings end. I hope that the whole lesson would be meaningful and understandable for you. You may have to watch it twice to get into the psychology, and ultimately it will help you write a good answer in your college exams as well as CIs. So take care. Allah Hafiz. See you next time. Allah Hafiz.